Hello. Let's make a two-tone cotton washcloth today. This will be a miniature version, but you'll be able to make it in full version using the pattern at my website. I'll be sure to drop the link below, but let's get started knitting. We'll start with color 1, and we'll go ahead and cast on to our number 7 knitting needles. I'll be using circular needles, but you can certainly use straight needles for this pattern as well. We'll start by casting on 14 stitches using the long tail cast on. You'll find about 14 inches worth of yarn from the end, 1 inch for every stitch you plan to cast on, and make a slip knot. Put that slip knot on one knitting needle tip and tighten it to fit on the needle. Next, we'll cast on the remaining stitches, remembering that the first stitch is the slip knot. So we'll do 13 more to make 14 complete stitches. You go under by your thumb, grab around, pull through, and gently tighten the stitch onto the needle for your second stitch. If you're not sure how to do the long tail cast on and I'm going a little bit too quickly, I have another video that will show you a little bit more slowly how to do this cast on. But for now, we'll do 14 stitches, 2, 4, 5, 6, and that's 14. Next, we turn our work, which is a lot more simple than it sounds. Simply flip the needle over and put it in the other hand. Now that that loaded needle is in my left hand, I'll take the empty needle in my right hand, whether it's the other end of your circular needle or your other straight knitting needle, it will be the same process. So this pattern calls for knitting. For 1.5 inches, we insert through the front stitch, grab that yarn and pull through to make the knit stitch again. Through the front leg of the stitch, grab the working yarn and pull through, slip off to make a knit stitch. We'll do that all the way down the row, and the pattern would like us to do just knit stitches for every row for 1.5 inches. So following along with my pattern, that is what we will do. As you can see, I'm using just a bit of scrap yarn here. This is left over from another project, and it's perfect for knitting this tiny little face scrubby in 2 colors. Now that I've come to the end of the row, we turn again, placing the stitches in our left hand, putting the yarn behind the needle to make a knit stitch, empty needle in the right hand, insert the needle tip through the front leg of your first stitch, grab the working yarn and pull through, starting our next row, doing a knit stitch all the way down every stitch until we turn again. And now that you've seen the basic idea, I'll speed it up for you a little bit and fast forward so that we can get to our next step in the pattern. Now that we have knit our 11 rows in our first color, it's good to make a double check to make sure the pattern matches. So I'm going to take my ruler and make sure we've got about 1.5 inches worth of color 1 knitted. We do. So we can go ahead and move to color number 2. We will switch colors first by turning our work and putting it into the left hand. Empty needle will go into our right hand. Since we're switching colors, let's go ahead and drop color 1 and set it aside. And we'll pick up color 2, leaving just a little bit of a tail so that we can weave that in later. Lay it right next to color 1 and wrap around your hand so that you can start knitting directly into the next stitch, in the first stitch in the next row with the next color. Insert your needle into the stitch to knit. Grab the new color of yarn, bring it through, and slide off onto the right needle. You've made your first stitch in the new color. It will get a little loose here, but you just tighten the yarn to fix that, and when you weave in your ends, that problem will be solved. Then just proceed to knit down the row in your new color until the entire row is complete, and you will have switched from color 1 to color 2. As you can see, I don't need to be connected to this ball anymore, since this will just be a 2-color knitted item, 1 color change. So I'm going to trim off color 1 so that the tail is about the same length as, oh, don't pull it too tight, as this color number 2's tail. We'll weave those in at the end of the project. Trim, and you can set color 1 aside since you are finished with that for this project. Next, we'll go back into knitting the rest of the project, turning our work, placing it into our left hand and the empty needle in the right hand, and we will knit the remainder of the pattern in color number 2. I will go ahead and do the remaining section in fast forward for you as I knit a little bit slowly in real time, and when we get to the bind off, I will show you how to take this project off the needles. Okay, we have come to the point in our pattern where it's time to turn our work and bind off, which means we're going to take these stitches off the knitting needles. For the bind off, we will continue to knit in the same color. We'll knit 1 and 2. We'll knit them a little bit more loosely than we did the other stitches, which means wrap them a little bit less tightly around the needle. And then take stitch 1 and lift it over stitch 2, pulling stitch 2 through and letting stitch 1 come off the needle, leaving 1 stitch on the right hand needle. Knit 1 more stitch. In the same way, we will lift stitch 1 over stitch 2, pulling stitch 2 through and letting it go to the right hand needle. 1 stitch on the right hand needle, knit 1 more, lift the first over the second, slipping to the right side, never having more than 2 stitches on your right hand needle at any given time in the bind off. You can see that starts to remove the stitches from the needles and create a flat edge. Do that with every stitch until the end of the row, and eventually all your stitches will have come off that left hand needle. As we come to the end of that row, 1 stitch on the right needle, 1 stitch on the left needle. We'll again knit into the last stitch, removing everything from the left hand needle. Both will be on the right needle. Lift the first stitch over the second as we have been doing. All stitches have been removed from the left hand needle and there's only 1 stitch remaining on the right. So now we'll remove this stitch by clipping the yarn with some scissors. Leave a yarn tail that you can weave in about 8 or 10 inches long. And before removing the needle, we will slide the stitch through, which just means pull right off the needle. That anchors it in. And your stitches won't run anymore. And all you have left to do is tie in the loose ends, which we will do next. Now to weave in these loose ends on our little 2-color washcloth, we'll need to pick out our darning needle, blunt tipped, and we will use that to sew these loose ends in. I like to start with the last thing that I finish, which was the bind off. So we'll do that by putting the loose end onto the darning needle. Slide it right through the eye of the needle. And just enough so that you can start sewing this in. We won't do too many stitches into this washcloth. We'll just go ahead and make that in tidy. So do you see how we have a bit of a loose stitch here? We'll fix that by taking the needle, going under and through that loop, then bring your yarn up and around, which will tug that loose tip more into place with the rest of the item. Now that you've done that, we'll go back up through one of the stitches below, Gently, just matching the tension of your item, not too tight. Then down through the very last stitch that we did when we did our bind off. So down through that stitch, and that will match up the pattern at the edge. Now we'll find a stitch that we will anchor to. Instead of weaving in my ends completely and leaving a loose tail, I like to go through one of the nearby stitches. Make sure it matches the pattern before you go any further. Sort of tug at it a little bit. And that'll look good, especially once it's blocked. Then we'll take the yarn off the darning needle. We'll split the plies. See how there are 4 separate little strands in this one piece of yarn? So we'll split them in half, 2 on each side. Be gentle so you don't break the yarn. One side will go back on this darning needle. You see the stitch that we are going to try to anchor through is right here. And you want to go over it and up right next to the other side of the yarn tail. That will tie it onto this particular stitch, keeping the end in place. We'll take the darning needle away for the time being, and we're going to tie a little knot. So lay your ends in opposite directions, and using opposite hands on the opposite side, we're going to tie a knot. Cross over, through, and pull down just to the surface, not too tight, so as to keep the tension proper. And then we're going to make another knot in the exact same way. Lay those ends out, switch hands, opposite sides. Same way as we did last time, exactly. Pull the knot this time. Try to pull it tightly. If it starts slipping and messing up your tension, you'll need to tie another knot in the exact same way. If you can pull it pretty tightly, you're good to go with the scissors. Be careful not to pull too tightly or you can break these little strands of yarn. Now we'll bring our scissors in and clip right next to the knot. Making sure not to clip the knot or the knitting work. Excuse me. We clip both sides. Stretch a little. The tiny knot hides itself. And that end is finished. Now let's turn it over and do the cast on edge. That's where we started. We'll do this in a very similar way. Darning needle, loose end. Pull it through the eye of the needle. And we'll just tidy up the loose edge just a bit. This one's more tidy than the bind off edge. So we'll go through and up. Gently again. And that edge is now nice and neat. We'll find a stitch that we can anchor to. This one looks just fine. So go towards the edge again. Pull it through. Make sure it's going to match the pattern. And then we can take it off the darning needle and start to tie our knot. We'll split the ply again, the two sides of the yarn. Since there's 4 pieces here, 2 pieces on each side. Nice and gently. And if you have this problem and you have plenty of yarn and you get tugged up, you can clip it off, but if you just tug gently, it will come apart. Put one side on that darning needle again. There we go. And pick it back up to find the stitch that we went to anchor onto. Again, we're going to go down and around that particular stitch so that the yarn tail will come next to the other one. Take the strand off the darning needle and lay them out in opposite directions to tie our little knot. Opposite hands, opposite strands, cross, bring it through, pull it to the surface gently, and lay the strands out again. Switch hands, same knot, down to the surface of the knitting. This one we try to pull tight, the second knot. Again, if it slips, stop and pull another knot. If it's tight like this, you can clip it off. Okay. Again, stretch just a little, both to make sure the knot is secure and to hide it in the knitting. That edge is finished. Now we will deal with these 2 yarn tails and make it match the pattern on the other side. If you look closely, it's not a perfect row the way we switch colors. It has a cute little upward curly Q on the side, so we're going to match that on the other side. Since it's blue, we're going to take the blue and put that on our darning needle. My tails are a little bit short for this, but that will work just fine. So, as we do want to match the other side, we look how it's connected to the row right above. And it looks like it goes up and then it'll go around and through that purple. As you see, it loosens the stitch that's attached to the purple yarn tail, but that's okay. Now to make it match, we're wanting to bring it around towards the back and down through the stitch here. And as you see, that makes the blue and the blue match properly. We'll take that on the back side here. Bring that through. And we're going to tie this off separately. The same way we did our other loose ends. So split that yarn in 2. One side on the needle. Find the stitch and go right up next to the other side of yarn. And even with the shorter tail, we can still tie the little knot. Opposite hands, opposite strands. Cross, bring it under and through, down to the surface. Another opposite hand, opposite strands, cross, bring through, down to the surface. This one we pull tighter. And we'll wait to clip this off till we get the purple one to match, okay? As you see, this side with the purple matches the pattern, and it matches on this side almost as well. So we'll take this purple strand and we'll just kind of tuck it up into the purple section. We'll put it on our darning needle. And again, find a stitch to anchor to that is purple so it matches. Right up and through. We can take the yarn off the needle and split the plies. There we go. Back on the needle with half the yarn. Under, around, and right next to the other side. Lay them out. And we'll tie our little knot, opposite hands, opposite strands, to the surface. To the surface, pull tight, and we can clip those edges off too. Okay, they're not. And it does look a little wonky still, but when we stretch it to hide the knots, everything goes into place. Back side, front side, and now we've finished our little washcloth. What you do next is go ahead and just wash it in the washing machine to block it. Don't run it through the dryer, but take it out wet. Make sure it's about 3 inches by 3 inches after you get it through that washing machine on gentle or hand wash cycle by itself, so you don't ruin anything with the colors. And you have a washcloth. Doesn't matter whether it is this small 3x3 size, which we use as a face scrubby around here, or if you're making the larger sizes that come with the full knitting pattern at pearlsandpixels.com. There is a pattern for an 8x8 washcloth as well as a full-sized hand towel that come along with the instructions for this little scrubby. And I hope that helped you learn how to switch colors on a flat knit, and I hope you have a lovely day.